Howdy, folks. Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining us on the last Tuesday of the month. We've got a good one here for folks today. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the chat. All right. All right. Well, as per usual, we're going to go ahead and give people a couple of minutes to show up here before we dive in. But I am super excited about this one. We have a guest who's going to be joining us. I'm excited to give Rebecca the opportunity to talk about niching her firm. I know it's a topic that people talk about a lot in the abstract, but I think it's going to be really interesting to hear from Rebecca in the concrete. And of course, we have some great new features to showcase as well. Hey, Sheena. All right, well, we're going to give people about 10, 15 more seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and dive on in. For those of you who are picking up the pattern here, the real-time attendance is taken is at 2 past the hour, and we are there now. So we're going to go ahead and get things started. Thank you all so much for taking the time. If this is your first ever Catch Up with Keeper webinar, a little bit about the way things work. So we start with a rundown of all the new features we've shipped in the last month. After that, we will dive into some Q&A, answering any questions that you may have about those features or about anything else Keeper related. And then finally, if we have any guests on, then we'll bring on the guests. In this case, we have a wonderful guest. Rebecca Driscoll from Conscious Accounting is here to tell us about her experience starting the journey of niching her firm. So going to have some super interesting questions, some super interesting conversation on that. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will go ahead and get things started. All right. So as is becoming more and more the case as we continue to ship improvements with the Chrome extension, the first update I have to tell people about is not actually in Keeper, and that's because it's in the Chrome extension. And that is, you now have the ability to access your client details. That's your details, your notes, and your files from anywhere. So you just click the Chrome extension right here, and then whatever page you're on, you can click the client info button once it finishes loading here. And that will pull up your details. You can see and edit those. Your notes as well here, so you can add new notes, or you can open up any of your notes that you have here, and then you can also see download any of your files that you've stored within Keeper. And so this continues to build on the other things that we have in here, like the ability to add a question, some more new features coming in soon that I won't talk about because they're not yet released. But the idea here is to give you the ability to access your Keeper information without needing to go into Keeper, so wherever you are. All right. So the next improvement we have to talk about today is line item editing in Xero. And so in particular, if you go to a Xero file, before today, you could see line items, but you weren't able to edit them. So now you can. And so we're going to go ahead and dive into our Xero file here. And we will show you all just exactly how that works. So nothing particularly controversial here, but now all of these fields are not grayed out. And so you can type in a field, let's say sales and marketing, tracking category here, and then that will update and sync that change back to Xero. And quick note for folks who didn't know, if you click the date here, that will open the transaction. So if you're just getting started with Keeper, you want to confirm that the edit synced through, you can do that just by clicking the date. We can see here that's been changed to sales and marketing. All right. One of the other sort of main themes of our last few months is we're continuing to try to improve, polish Keeper, unclunk some of the rough edges. So a couple of places that we've done this, I think that would be relevant to show. One of the ones that I think speaks thematically to some of the stuff that we do really well here at Keeper, especially on the client list, is give you the ability not to need to go to the close page at all. And so here, for example, you can now see your see your task descriptions within the what we call the task quick view. So if you have some detailed information about like how to fetch a bank statement, for example, you can now see that right here within the quick view without even needing to go into that close directly. You can click out to different links. You can see the details here. Of course, these details can be short or long. And you can also add tasks with task descriptions as well. And so this is continuing to help you access the sort of detailed information of your close without needing to go into your close. Another example that I'll show really quickly here is, I know some folks here voiced their displeasure at the UI when you're switching clients and closes. So we've now improved that UI, made it look a little bit more modern, a little bit more, more natural here as well. So this is if you're switching clients directly from the close page. All right. And then the last update we have to share with this month is you can now see journal entry details in the P&L drill down. So this is something that you may never have noticed, or you may have noticed every close, depending on what type of clients you service. But this is especially relevant if you have accrual heavy clients, clients where you're making specific journal entries. And so let's say you have to post a bunch of prepaid expense amortization transactions at the end of the month. Previously, up until a couple of weeks ago, you would only see those sort of all grouped together in a single line item in software that said journal entries. But now you can see those journal entries are now bucketed into their appropriate vendors. So if you have a vendor here, if we go in and look at, you may need to log back into Salesforce. But yeah, if you have a vendor here on a particular line item in a journal entry, yeah, we would need to log into QBO. So I will spare people the long login times from QuickBooks. But if you have a journal entry that has a vendor on it, that will now get pulled into the transaction drill down, or sorry, the vendor drill down on the P&L and the balance sheet. All right. So that's it for the updates for this month. So pretty tight update list for this month. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, try and drop them in the Q&A section rather than the chat section. We will monitor chats as well, but Q&A is a little bit easier to respond to. So for starters, Sabrina has asked a question that really is a feature request, and that one that I deeply empathize with. So Sabrina asked, she has 55 clients to turn over from April to May. What's the fastest way to bulk start all the new closes rather than closing each one individually? And tragically, there is not a good answer to this question. There should be. And so I'm gonna make a note here as well to talk to the engineering team about how we can support that, especially given that the new month-end close is coming around the corner in a couple of days. Okay, Melissa asked, "What's the email address for Keeper Ideas again?" So we do have an email address for Keeper Ideas called smallfrustratingthings@keeper.app. Important to use that only for small frustrating things. So this is like you are encountering some tiny thing that's like really driving up the wall, or just like you think would make the Keeper experience feel more polished. If you have feature requests, for the most part, like anything other than just like a small frustrating thing, Canny is the place to do that. So that is keeperapp.canny.io. I'm going to drop that into the chat here so that people can have it. And here you can just click the give feedback section, and then you can create a post, or you can search for existing posts and see anything that other people have voted on here as well, and weigh in, and that helps us prioritize our roadmap as well. Craig pointed out something that did not in the chat, that didn't rise to the level of what we announced here as well, but we did finally support adding 2FA in the Chrome extension. So previously, the Chrome 2FA wasn't compatible with the Chrome extension, but now that's good to go. So if you were holding off on using the Chrome extension based on not having 2FA support, you can go ahead and dive on in at your leisure. Accounting partner program. Okay, so Juan asked if there are plans to have an accounting partner program similar to other accounting software apps. So I think one of the things I'll mention here is we don't have an accounting partner program per se, because y'all are not our like partners. You are our direct customers. So we're not like trying to get you to sell Keeper to your clients. We're just trying to sell Keeper to you. As we don't have a partner program. That said, we do have a referral program. And I will drop the link to the chat. I will drop the link to that here in the chat in 1 second. Okay, so that link is now in the chat, pulling it up here as well. So you can sign up here. Anyone who signs up, you can get a link, you can share to your friends, and anyone who you refer will get 20% off their first 3 months. And you'll get a 20% sort of referral benefit from each of their first 12 payments. Okay. Anonymous attendee asked for more Office 365 integrations. So looks like similar to what we do here with Gmail today, where you can add a task directly from an email. Duly noted, we actually have some interesting stuff, hopefully in the works sooner rather than later, in terms of deeper email integration. So folks who are excited about that, stay posted, more to update in the next couple of months. Another anonymous attendee asked what the best way to track the metrics on each team member's progress each week by client. I think probably the best way to do that would be if you use time tracking to go to your time tracking reporting section, and you can run employee reporting to see billable and non-billable or total hours. And then from each hour, so if we wanted to just do the last week, from each hour, you can drill down into their individual timers and see what it was that they're spending time on. Okay, Bonnie asked, how do we locate our referral link? So if you go to that link that I dropped in the chat, you can, if you try to sign up and you have, like, it'll say you've already signed up, there should be a login section there, and that should give you your link. Crystal asked if we can add an attachment to the financial report from the email section. Crystal and Heather actually both asked about two of our most common feature requests. So there is not currently a way to add a sort of supplemental PDF to the financial report. So I will point out the Canny for that. Yeah, so we do, generally speaking, post all the updates into Canny. It's actually might just even be easier to go to our top requests. So I know this is on here. Yeah, okay. So not currently something that we support, although it is something that we're working on some major upgrades to our reporting to support things like this and other use cases. And then the other question was Heather, who asked for an ETA on archiving clients. I don't have an ETA, although I will say we are getting much closer to shipping it. I know that is frustratingly vague, but that is the only update I can provide. And I promise you it's something that we talk about every single sprint. So we are working on it. It will be here sooner rather than later. I can't promise a specific timeline. All right. Well, that appears to be all of the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now. And I'm going to go ahead and invite up Rebecca. All right.
Hi.
Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know Rebecca, Rebecca Driscoll is the owner of Conscious Accounting. They are one of our first customers, which is relevant only to us, but also they were a super early believer in Keeper, and hopefully they feel like they've been rewarded for that belief.
Oh, yeah.
And she also has recently made the decision to niche her firm. So I don't want to spoil anything, but Rebecca, would love if you could just tell us a little bit more about your experience deciding to niche, some of the things you wrestled with, and then I'm going to ask some questions. So, and then we'll also take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is relevant whether you have like a bookkeeping only practice or tax and bookkeeping. And it's something that I honestly can't say that I have even fully figured out yet, but it's a very big decision, and there's a lot of kind of stages to it. So I guess, I hear a lot about niching right now. That's kind of a hot topic when I go to conferences, and the colleagues I have who do have a specific, niche or industry that they work with seem to be having a lot easier time with streamlining processes and knowing what kind of pricing they should offer and things like that. So that's kind of what intrigued me. And I am soon to be a mom of two under two. So my thought was whatever I can do to streamline my business to help my employees run the business, would be really great. So that's kind of what got me into thinking about a niche. And as I started exploring it, the benefits that became clear to me were, from a bookkeeping perspective, we could have one chart of accounts that we just, plug into every new client. And that's really easy for training employees to be able to say, there's not this nuance of, well, with this client, it's called this, but with that client, we call the account this. It's just like, we know this industry, we know this type of client, this is the standardized, approach we use. And I really think that, would have huge benefits for training purposes, for building a team. So that was one kind of exciting piece to it. And then also just being able to anticipate, your client's needs given their industry, and, be able to make recommendations on what type of reporting they might want, what kind of metrics they might want, because you like really understand their industry, was another benefit to me. One thing that was really exciting to me too was thinking about benchmarking. So if I have data, in Keeper, all these reports for clients, that are all in the same industry, I can start looking at trends and say, oh, your advertising is a higher than average, percent of your revenue compared to, other people that we have access to financials of in your industry. So we can like really give valuable insights if we're only drilling down to one industry's, reporting and metrics. So adding that much more value to a client, also warrants charging a fee, because you're becoming an expert in that field, and you can go to their industry's conferences and speak to their colleagues and things like that. And it just kind of seems like a neater, tidier way to do business. And right now, I don't know about everybody else, but before thinking of doing this, it was, jumping from my, restaurant clients to a construction client to a pet store owner. And, the pet store owner wants to know if this certain item is exempt from sales tax, and the construction guy wants to know how to help his cash flow. And it's kind of hard to be an expert at all of these different things, right? Like, especially when I'm trying to balance, building a family too. So it just makes more sense to have a narrowed approach, and then you can get like really excited about that particular industry and start, sharing content, out to the world, about how accounting in that industry relate, and just really be like very, very helpful to that industry. So the problem is picking an industry is not easy. And there's a big difference between choosing a niche when you are already established with a book of business that's not within a niche versus just starting a business, and getting to kind of pave your own way from the beginning. So for me, I started by looking at trends in my book of business to see, who do we have the most of, who tends to find us and just gravitates towards our branding or our mission, and who do we really like working with, who are the ones that our employees are, really thriving with working with, and who are the ones that are really challenging, because it also depends on like your capacity and your, maybe you love construction, but you just don't have a big enough team to be able to support, such in-depth month-end closes, or, so it's kind of like a lot of variables there. So that's, and then there's kind of like the scarcity mindset of like, well, what if I put all my eggs in one basket and then that industry tanks, or, there's a recession, or I can't find people in that industry, so I do recommend taking kind of a gradual approach of not just, informing all your clients on the same day that since they're not in the niche anymore, they're gone, and kind of just replacing them over time. The niche that we chose is, or was, I'll kind of give you some updates on where we're at, online coaches. So kind of like consultants and things can fit into this too, but it was, people who have, a lot of them have gone through like the life coaching school training, and they are either business coaches or life coaches, or they even have a niche of the type of coaching they do. And they're typically, a one owner business that has really high revenue and really low overhead, and a lot of opportunities for tax savings. And we have a handful of these clients already. So it kind of felt natural to just keep connecting with them and their friends and colleagues, and kind of keep servicing their industry. One thing that I discovered through the process of, starting to make this known was, okay, so first step was picking the industry. Second step, I reached out to our current clients in that industry to sort of announce to them that this was what we were going to do, and request some calls with them to see if I could ask for some feedback. So that was really great to get feedback from them on, what keeps you up at night, what are the big questions that, you want to be answered by an accountant, like things like that, to start understanding like how could I build, service offerings, or maybe new packages, or, just spruce up our existing offerings in a way that really appeals to that particular industry. So we did that. And then it's kind of like the next step is like, okay, now you have to go get the customers, right? And that's sort of where I'm at a pause. And my excuse is that I don't really have the luxury of time right now to really go all in with this. And this is my story. So my story is very different. So for me, prepping for baby number 2 is not permitting me to have all this like time to really like get on a bunch of podcasts and explore, networking with this niche. But if I did have, a nice slow summer, off tax season, and I could just kind of dedicate my time to this, what I would do and what I would recommend doing is building a ton of content. And that's just something that I'm just like not up for right now. So, and I'm in a situation where I'm okay with pausing this goal right now. And I think that niching should be something that you take very slow and really think about. So I'm happy with my decision to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. But content is really what will drive becoming a name in that industry and getting all of the word of mouth and the your name being put out there. So a few different options for content. One is finding like a Facebook group or an online forum for that industry. Like in real estate, there's I think is Bigger Pockets is the name of it. Yeah. So like going on there and just this, my colleague Brandon Hall, this is how he started his real estate niche, was going on there and just answering any tax questions he could find and just kept mentioning that he could help people. So kind of going where all of the people are already hanging out, finding where those places are and just being there and being helpful and sharing your contact information. Then also you could pick a social media, place that feels right to you, whether it's YouTube or just blogging or Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever it is, and just start building content around, that particular industry and helping them solve problems in their industry that relate to accounting. So I just kind of am in a place where I don't have the energy to do that right now, but I see that as like the next step. Once you've kind of done all the other things, you've talked to your existing clients, you've picked the industry that feels right, you've kind of come up with like service packages, offerings, then it's just starting to kind of blast out into the world. This is what I do, and this is who we are, and this is who we help. And over time, the traction will build, and it probably will take, at least 6 months, I would think, for, that your name to really get out there in that industry that you chose. But that's kind of what I would do and what I probably will do when I pick this back up. Now, in the meantime, I still wanted to find a way to streamline the business when we get new inquiries, because we are fortunate that we still get inquiries every day, not every day, but a lot of days, for just all sorts of different industries of people who find us and they fill out our form online. So I wanted to have my team have a kind of a way to handle that, the incoming, inquiries, while, I'm gonna try to attempt to take a maternity leave in a few weeks here. So what I kind of realized that there's sort of another type of niche that you can do, and that is it's what you offer clients. So not choosing an industry, but choosing like a pricing kind of like minimum for yourself, and a type and a limited list of services that you offer. And that sort of weeds out a lot of people. So for example, if my minimum bookkeeping, fee per month is $1,000 a month, and we don't work with any clients that are under $1,000 a month, well, I've sort of like niched myself in a way, because now, indirectly, that means that the freelance photographer who, makes, $1,000 a month doing this on the side, like now, like sees that she can't afford our minimum. So we've sort of narrowed our focus of, you have to be at a certain revenue kind of threshold to be able to work with us. So I'd recommend, if you're not ready to pick an industry, or you don't ever want to pick an industry, maybe just pick like we only do tax returns for people we do bookkeeping for. So you have to have a bookkeeping and tax package with us, and the packages start at this price. That will kind of weed out a lot of people indirectly, without having to, commit to an industry. So that's what we are implementing now, so that we're kind of still on the path to our goal of streamlining, but without aggressively creating content at this time.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I have some questions here, but before I do that, I want to open it up to the room in the chat here, see if anyone else has any questions for Rebecca on niching. So I'll open up the chat here, and feel free to ask away, folks. Sometimes the chat can make people shy. All right. Well, while people are thinking about it, I'm going to ask some questions. So my first question is, what other industries did you think about, you consider before you settled on coaches?
That's a great question. We thought about real estate a lot. We have a lot of realtors, so not necessarily like property, investment people, but just realtors. And realtors need a lot of help because they don't know when they're going to get paid next, and that money has to kind of stretch them, and there's they have to be saving for taxes, and they have to, if they're going to be an S corp, they need to figure out how much their payroll should be when they don't have predictable income. So that's like an industry that we identified that like could really use a lot of support, and we have a lot of them. So that was sort of up in the running for us as well.
I'm curious what led you to choose choose coaches over payroll, or sorry, over real estate.
I think that one thing that I learned a little later in the niche process is that picking a good niche is not just picking an industry, but also picking like a revenue band that they must be within, or a minimum. So with realtors, I feeling like, oh, well, they're not making enough right now for us to, like, we have some realtors that are just really small, and it's like, well, we can't really make an impact with them. But if I had said, realtors who are making over 6 figures a year in commissions, then that really narrows it down to a more specific niche that we can work with. So I recommend adding like a minimum revenue, or maybe even a maximum, to your niche, to kind of help you with thinking of what services you would offer, because like the needs are very different at different times. Like the really tiny ones, they don't really need bookkeeping, it felt like, and maybe it wasn't even their full-time gig, so kind of scared me away from it. But if I had just been more specific about revenue like thresholds, I think it would have been fine.
I think that's really interesting, and sort of coupling that with the last point that you mentioned around how niching can be like not just tightening your industry focus, but also your like functional focus, or like where you talked about like you sort of price out the low end of the market, and you can also say, okay, we're only going to do your books if or only going to do your return if you also do your books. It's interesting to think about. I think that's maybe a pretty unseen dimension on other ways you can niche if you don't want to just like narrow down and focus on one single industry.
Totally.
On that note, I'm curious also, so you talked about real estate, you talked about coaches. What fraction of your current client base today is coaches?
Geez, I think I had this number at one point. I would say if I include consultants as well, like, kind of like maybe they do marketing or they do something, but they still fit that same model of like a solo owner with, working from home with no overhead. Maybe they have an online course that they created. Maybe they have like a one-to-many kind of approach with their service offering. I would say it's probably over 30% of our current client list.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, so in this journey, you talked about like some piece of this is a little hung up by personal factors, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
What what would you say was the biggest difference between perception and reality when you sort of made the gut decision, I want to start looking at niching my firm, to now like really in the thicket of things, having walked through that journey?
I guess like being naive about it, I just thought if I changed, some of the wording on our website to say like, we help online coaches in the 6-figure and up, revenue range with their accounting and taxes. And I kind of just put that out there, maybe put a few posts on Instagram and told our existing clients about this. I guess I just thought like the floodgates were going to open, which I mean, I didn't think that to the extent that I like fired existing clients or anything. Like we still kept all of our clients. And I think someone was asking about what do you do with the clients when you are transitioning to the new clients. So I still have clients that are not in my niche, but with the new service offerings that we want to do, where we kind of have like, you have to have this package, you have to have tax planning if you're going to have the tax return. We are making some big decisions in the next weeks about, are we going to actually offboard the clients who say no to those things? And that's a calculated risk with how many clients can I afford to lose? If we lose $30,000 of revenue, are we okay? Is it worth it? What will that due to our capacity? Maybe that's a good thing to lose that business. So I recommend just kind of, taking a small handful of clients at a time and testing, before you just make an announcement to all clients. But yeah, I guess I just realized it's not going to be that easy to just be the person in that industry. It will take a lot of content creation. And I also wasn't feeling super passionate about creating content for online coaches, which was like an interesting thing that came up for me. So it's not necessarily just, well, these are like really easy clients to have, and we have a bunch of them. That's not enough, in my opinion. I think you also have to be interested. Like, I don't know that people who have like a dentist niche, like, are super passionate about like dental, care or whatever, but like, maybe they just feel like they know enough about that industry that they're kind of excited about it at this point because they've just invested so much time, in that industry. But I didn't find myself like feeling so passionate about, the industry. So I don't think you have to be passionate about the niche industry that you choose. But I think it will motivate you to create more content if you are.
Awesome. Okay, last question, or a couple of questions I want to ask about the team. So first is how you talked at the beginning, like, important to know that we like working, like, part of this function is making sure we like working with the clients we choose to work with. How deeply did you involve your team in this decision-making process in terms of choosing a niche?
I 100%, like, for all steps of the way. I started by having them look at their kind of little book of business of like who they work on a daily basis and tell me who their favorites were and why. Because if I were just to like choose a niche and like slash all the clients that they have relationships with already and all of that overnight, I'm not going to get a lot of buy-in from them. And clients are humans and we build human relationships with them. So it's important, to consider that. So I looked at the trends of who my employees said they really like working with and who they really struggle working with. And there's always going to be certain personalities, like, even though it's in the niche, this, is a wild card, person or something. But even when I found out, well, this one I don't love working with, the reason why they don't was interesting. And that was like something that could be easily solved. So I think it's a really great exercise, no matter what, to just be having your employees give you like top 5 favorites, top 5 least favorites, periodically, and just like talking about it with them and looking for trends in that data.
It sounds like that could be an interesting thing to do, even if you don't plan on niching your firm.
Yeah, like quarterly or twice a year or something. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Awesome. All right. Well, biggest takeaways for me here, if I ever chose to start an accounting business and then later decided to niche it, you can niche not just by your industry, but also by the services that you offer and the way that you package and price your services. When you do commit to a niche, start by asking your current clients for feedback, and then get ready to build a ton of content and serve the niche where they live online and in person. And then the last one is take a step-by-step approach, work with your team, don't fire all your clients at once, don't burn the boats, and make room for the life that you have to live as well.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us here. Do you have anything you want to leave the rest of the audience with?
I don't think so, but if anyone wants any help with it, you know, even though I'm not at the finish line, I've done a lot of research on this topic, so I'm happy to help anybody on their journey.
Awesome. Well, if anyone wants to take you up on that, how can they find you?
Let's see, I'm on tax Twitter a lot. So if you head over to Twitter, I'm at Conscious CPA, or you could just email me, Rebecca at conscious-accounting.com.
I'm going to drop both of those in the chat here.
Perfect. Awesome.
Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We will have you anytime you want to come.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, folks, that is all we have for today. So thank you all so much for taking the time. If you want to get in touch with Rebecca, you can reach out to her at on tax Twitter or at so that's twitter.com. Conscious CPA is her handle, and then also Rebecca at conscious-accounting.com. These webinars are always the last Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Central Time. But if you miss it, it's always also available recorded on our YouTube channel and in our Help Center. So thank you all so much for taking the time, and wish you all the best of luck with the May closes coming up in a couple of days.